Namaste. Welcome to the lecture series on the subject Applied Thermodynamics. This is Module 1 in that Part 2 IC Engines. This is lecture number 11. Myself Dr. N. Satish Kumar, Associate Professor of Mechanical Engineering, Canara Engineering College, Bantwal. So let us begin the discussion with the measurement of air consumption by air box method. So you know that the engine draws in air during the suction stroke. Okay, so if it is a diesel engine, it is pure air. If it is a petrol engine, it's a air plus petrol mixture. So however, there should be air should be taken inside the engine cylinder during the suction stroke. So the calculation of this air consumption is very much essential to find out the air fuel ratio, also to calculate the volumetric efficiency of the engine. You know that volumetric efficiency is nothing but the ratio of the actual volume of air drawn in during suction stroke to the swept volume or the stroke volume of the piston or the cylinder. Okay, now the apparatus for the measurement of air consumption is known as the air box. So you can see the diagram. So this is a big box here. You can see the air box. Okay, so one end of this air box is connected to the engine. You can see. So other end there is a orifice plate. You can see. So other side is small orifice plate is fitted. Okay, so it consists of an airtight chamber fitted with this sharp edged orifice of known coefficient of discharge. So this is the orifice plate. So very small diameter, 25 mm or sometimes 30-35 mm diameter orifice will be fitted, and the other side of the air tank or this air box is connected to the engine. You can see here. Okay, the orifice is located away from the suction connection to the engine. So this is a suction connection here, and this is the orifice. Sometimes the orifice may be fitted in the opposite wall, right, to the this suction connection. Due to the suction of the engine, there is a pressure drop in the air box or the chamber, which causes flow through the orifice. You see, you know that during suction, the pressure inside the engine cylinder drops below atmospheric. So same pressure drop is created inside the air tank as well, or air box as well, in the suction of the or during the suction of the engine, because the suction inside the cylinder there is a pressure drop. So the suction line is connected to the air box, so there is a pressure drop in the air box as well. Now to obtain the steady flow, so the volume of the chamber is kept sufficiently large compared to the swept volume, which is generally 500 to 600 times the swept volume. So you know how to calculate swept volume, pi d square by 4 into L. So you calculate the swept volume, and the size of this box is generally maintained at 500 to 600 times the swept volume. So it is assumed that the intermediate suction it is assumed that the intermediate suction of the engine will not affect the air pressure in the air box, as volume of the box is sufficiently large. So suction, you know that it's not a continuous process. Suction, compression, expansion, exhaust. So every one cycle, so there is one suction stroke. That means the suction is intermittent. Though it is intermittent, the pressure drop inside the air box will not be affected because of the large size of the box. So pressure drop always, or pressure remains same. Now you have to measure the pressure difference between the atmosphere and inside the box. For that, a water tube manometer is used to measure the pressure difference causing the flow through the orifice. You see, the flow through the orifice, or the air enters through the orifice only because of the pressure difference. So outside the orifice or outside the box we have the atmospheric pressure, but inside the air box there is a pressure drop due to the suction of the engine. So this pressure drop is causing the air to flow through the orifice and then to the engine. Now let us see how to calculate the measurement of air consumption. So let A be the area of the orifice in meter square, D is the diameter of the orifice in meter. Now HW is the head of water in meters. You know that manometer, it's a U-tube manometer having two limbs. So during the operation of the engine, because of the pressure difference, so the limb which is connected to the air box, so there is a lift in the level of water, and in the other limb there is a drop in the level of water. So the difference is measured in terms of head of water, which is HW in meters. And CD is the coefficient of discharge of the orifice, and if rho A is the density of air in kg per meter cube under atmospheric conditions, and rho W is the density of water in kg per meter cube, which is 1000 kg per meter cube. So rho A, that density of air, you can calculate using atmospheric condition. Okay, so mass by volume is the density, so PV is equal to MRT. You can use M by V is the density, which is nothing but P by RT. Now here the head difference, pressure difference, is calculated in terms of head of water in meters, so it should be converted into head of air in meters. So that is given by HA is equal to HW into rho W by rho A, so meters of air. So this is a very important formula to convert head of water into head of air. Now once you calculate the head of air in meters, the velocity of air passing through the orifice is given by V is equal to square root of 2g HA. So this expression gives the velocity of air flowing through the orifice. So once you calculate velocity, the volume of air passing through the orifice is given by CD into A into V. Actually volume is nothing but A into V, that is area into velocity, that is gives the volume flow rate, because area is meter square and V is the meter per second, so it becomes a meter cube per second. But you know that you have a coefficient of discharge for the orifice, so you have to multiply by this CD to this A into V to get the actual volume of air passing through the orifice. And V, just now you found it out as, or calculate it as, square root of 2g HA. So QA, you can calculate it as CD into A into square root of 2g HA meter cube per second. If you want to calculate the mass of air passing through, then you have to multiply this volume flow rate by the density. So meter cube per second into kg per meter cube, so you'll get kg per second. Okay, so the mass flow rate will be given in kg per second. So here if we require volume, so then you can stop it here, that is expression QA. Suppose if you want to find out volumetric efficiency, so then you can find out volume in meter cube per second. Suppose if you want mass of air supplied, so then you can multiply that with rho A to get it in kg per second. Okay. So now we'll discuss the measurement of brake power. So as you know, the brake power is the power available at the crankshaft or the output shaft of the engine, which is actually used for the useful work, maybe to drive the generator or to propel the vehicle or other systems. So there are different methods to find out or to measure this brake power. So let us discuss each of these methods one by one. To begin with, we have the rope brake dynamometer. So the arrangement for the determination of the brake power of the engine is called as the dynamometer. So the arrangement what we use for the determination of the brake power of the engine is called as the dynamometer. So in a rope brake dynamometer, as you can see, a rope is wound around the circumference of the brake wheel. You see, this is called as the brake wheel. So this is the brake wheel. So this is dotted line, you can see dotted. Actually it is a rope actually. So rope is wound around the brake wheel, and one end is connected to this spring scale, and other end, right? So it connected to a support here which carries some weight. You can see this is the weight pan. So this is a weight pan, and on that some weight is placed. Okay, so in a rope brake dynamometer, rope is wound around the circumference of the brake wheel, one end of which is connected to the spring, other end carries some load W. Okay, the speed of the engine is noted using the tachometer, which is very essential because the spring balance reading, the load as well as the speed is required to measure the brake power of the engine. So engine is run at the constant speed, and you have to apply the load. So load can be varied from 0 to full load in steps, maybe 25%, 50% of full load, 75% of full load, maybe 100%, that is full load. So for each load you can measure the brake power. So usually because of this friction, the brake wheel gets heated during this loading. So for that you have the arrangement for the supply of cooling water. So this has to be supplied only when engine is running. Okay. And now let us see how to measure the brake power by knowing these readings. So let W is the weight at the end of the rope, and S is the spring balance reading, both taken in Newton. Okay, though the weight is placed in terms of kgs, so you have to multiply it by 9.81 to convert that into Newton. So in the numerical, while solving numerical, be careful. If the load is given in kg, so better you multiply by 9.81 and convert into Newton while noting the given data itself. Okay. If it is given in Newton, no issues. And n is the speed of the engine, it should be in RPM. Now diameter of the brake wheel has to be noted, and also the diameter of the rope, because you have to calculate the torque. So torque is nothing but the force into distance. So your distance is measured from the center of the rope to the center of the brake wheel. For that you need diameter of the brake wheel as well as the diameter of the rope, and the effective diameter will be dB plus dr, that is diameter of brake plus diameter of the rope. Now let us begin the calculation. So the work per revolution is nothing but torque into angle turned per revolution. So you know that during one revolution the angle turned is nothing but 2 pi radians, and the torque is nothing but load is to distance. So here spring balance reading and W, so the effective load is W minus S. Okay, so W minus S acting in the downward direction, because W will be more than S, and the torque is nothing but this load or the force into this perpendicular distance, or distance between the center of the rope axis to the center of this wheel, which is nothing but R. So R is nothing but effective diameter of the brake wheel divided by 2, which is given here. So R is calculated by adding the diameter of the brake plus diameter of the rope and dividing it by 2. So in the exam, in solving numerical, so be careful. So if diameter of brake wheel and diameter of rope is given, so you have to add and you have to divide it by 2 to get the effective radius. Okay. Sometimes the rope diameter will not be given, then you can neglect that and you can take the diameter of the brake wheel divided by 2 as the radius, effective radius. In the previous slide we calculated work done per cycle. Now if you want to calculate the work done per minute, so then work done per cycle should be multiplied number of cycles per minute. So that is nothing but the revolution or speed of the engine. So you have to multiply by n to get the work done per minute. Actually previous slide we add W minus S into R, that is torque, into 2 pi, that is the angle turned in radians. Now you are multiplying it by n to get work done per minute, because work done per revolution into number of revolutions per minute. So revolution gets cancelled, we will get work done per minute. Now work done per second, if you want, you have to divide this expression by 60. So then you will get watts, because work expression is work is done in nothing but Newton meter, because W minus S is Newton, R is in meters, so Newton meters. Okay, so Newton meter divided by second, here actually it's Newton meter per minute. Okay, because RPM is per revolutions per minute, so this expression is Newton per minute. Newton meter per minute divided by 60, it becomes Newton meter per second. Newton meter is nothing but joules, so joules per second is nothing but watt. So you should be knowing the units of each and every physical quantity in the expression. That is very, very important. Okay, therefore, so this work done per second is also called as the brake power, which is the power available at the output shaft. So that is given by 2 pi n into W minus S into R by 60 by 1000 to convert watt into kilowatt. So divided by 1000 to convert into kilowatt. Suppose if you are using the formula 2 pi n W minus S into R by 60, so then you will get the answer in watt. So now this W minus S into R is nothing but the torque, so you can write it as 2 pi nt by 60 by 1000 also. Now suppose if you substitute for R as dB plus dr by 2, so by 2 and this 2 gets cancelled, so you will get pi into n into W minus S into dB plus dr divided by 60,000 kilowatt. But I request all of you to remember either this formula 2 pi n t by 60,000, or in place of t you can remember it as 2 pi n into w minus s into r divided by 60 divided by 1000. So this is how the brake power is measured using rope brake dynamometer. The next arrangement is called as Prony brake dynamometer. So this is a diagram for the Prony brake, and here is the brake wheel or the flywheel you can see here, and on the outside, so it has consisting of a pair of brake shoes, so usually made up of wood, which are held in place by means of a spring loaded bolts. So this is the pair of shoes you can see, and it is held in place by means of bolt and nut arrangement, as you can see here. The pressure on the rim of the brake drum, that is wheel, is adjusted with the help of nuts. So the pressure is applied by using these nuts. So weights are placed on the load carrier. You can see this is the load carrier, okay, so which is having a at a distance of torque arm length, okay. So from the center, so you should know what is this torque arm length here, from here to here, okay, because load is applied at this point. So weights are placed on the load carrier at the end of the load bar or the lever. Increasing the weights will increase the pressure on the brake shoes of the drum. So more the weight is placed on this here on the load carrier, so more is the pressure applied, okay, which results in increase in the frictional torque of the engine has to overcome. So more the load you apply, so more is the frictional torque it has to overcome. So the load bar should be always horizontal. For that you have to use these two nuts, okay, to make it horizontal. So either you tighten or loosen the nuts and make it horizontal while measuring the load. That means if it is horizontal, so then whatever the frictional load that is applied on the brake shoes will be equal to this weight applied here, okay. Now if W is the weight of the load carrier and L is the distance of the shaft axis and the line of action of the weight, then torque here, the frictional torque to overcome, is nothing but W into L. In the previous case it was W minus S into R, because there was spring balance reading as well as the load on the pan, but here only load is placed in the load carrier, and its center of the load carrier is having a distance of L, that is torque arm length is L from the center of the brake wheel. So torque is nothing but W into L. So brake power of the engine, as you know, is nothing but 2 pi nt by 60 by 1000. So I don't want to explain you how did you get this expression. So here only thing is you have to replace T by W into L, okay. So that is how you have to find out. Next is the measurement of indicated power, okay. So now let us discuss how the indicated power can be measured by using engine indicator. So indicator power is usually determined with the help of PV diagram taken with the help of an engine indicator. So indicator diagram is nothing but the actual PV diagram, okay. The theoretical PV diagram is studied in air standard cycles for Otto cycle, diesel cycle and the dual cycle, but there is a variation with respect to the actual PV diagram drawn using the engine indicator. So you can see here, so this is the actual indicator diagram or the actual PV diagram. So this is the, you see, this is the beginning of compression. So you can see, and you see there is no corner point. This is a constant volume heat addition. Then you can see the expansion, okay, this is the heat rejection. Then this is the exhaust stroke. Then so there is a pressure drop, and then there is the intake or the suction stroke. So this area you have to note down to calculate the indicated power of the engine. So for that, this indicator diagram is used to measure the mean effective pressure. So mean effective pressure is nothing but the hypothetical pressure acting on the piston during the power stroke as well as the compression stroke, okay. So the average pressure is the mean effective pressure. So it is measured or computed by measuring the area of the diagram. So area of the diagram you have to measure. So for that you can use a planimeter or by ordinate method. So you have to use the ordinates. So small areas you have to split this indicator diagram, and you have to calculate the total area, or if you use a device called as planimeter, so directly you will get what is the area of the diagram. So if you calculate or measure the area of the diagram, then the mean effective pressure is given by net area of the diagram in millimeter square divided by length of the diagram into spring constant. So A into S by L. So this you have to remember, the expression for mean effective pressure using engine indicator is A into S by L. So here A is should be in usually it will be in millimeter square, and L will be in millimeters. So they has to be in same units. If area is in meter square, then L has to be in meter, right? Now the unit of this PMI is decided by the unit of the spring constant, or S. So here PMI is in bar or kilopascal. So uh, that depends upon the spring constant S. Okay, so it can be in bar, in kilopascal or pascal. If S is in bar per millimeter, suppose if the, you see I told you A is in millimeter, L is in millimeter, and if S is in bar per millimeter, so bar per millimeter means millimeter comes to the denominator, so millimeter square and that millimeter into millimeter gets cancelled, so then you will get PMI in bar. Suppose if S is in kilopascal per millimeter, then you will get PMI in kilopascal. If S is in pascal per millimeter, then you will get mean effective pressure in pascal. That means the unit of S, whether it is bar per millimeter, kilopascal per millimeter, or pascal per millimeter, so that will decide the unit of PMI. Okay, the rest of the things has to be in the same unit. Suppose if the area is in millimeter square, length of the diagram should be in millimeter, and spring constant should be per millimeter. Suppose if everything is meter, then also fine. Okay. Now let us see how to calculate the indicated power once you find out the indicated mean effective pressure using the engine indicator. If PMI is the indicated mean effective pressure in Pascal, and A is the area of the piston in meter square, L is the length of the stroke in meters, and N is the number of explosions per minute or number of working strokes per minute. See, number of explosions means when the fuel burns, there's combustion. So actually it's nothing but like explosion. So sudden rise in pressure is created because of this burning or the combustion of the fuel. So it's called as explosion, or it also called as the number of working strokes, because after this explosion, so the piston moves down by the pressure of the burnt gases, so leading to working stroke. So now here, so working stroke per minute or the number of cycles per minute is very important. So this number of explosions per minute is equal to speed for the two-stroke engine, and it is equal to speed by 2 for four-stroke engine. So as all of you know, in a two-stroke engine, for every revolution of the crankshaft, so there is one power stroke or there is one explosion. So very easy to calculate the number of explosions if you know the speed, so it is equal to the speed. Whereas in case of four-stroke engine, so two revolutions of the crankshaft constitutes one cycle. That means suction and compression, one revolution of the crankshaft, power and exhaust will complete another revolution. So two revolutions of the crankshaft, one power stroke or the working stroke. That means it's 50%. So it is half of that. So that is why, so number of explosions for four-stroke engine is nothing but speed divided by 2. So speed should be in RPM, and if K is the number of cylinders, now then we'll see how to calculate the indicated power. Now if PMI is the mean effective pressure acting on the piston, that is the average pressure acting on the piston, then the force on the piston is nothing but pressure into area. So that all of you know, pressure is force by area. So force is equal to pressure into area. So it is Newton is the unit. Now work done per working stroke is nothing but PMI into A into L. Now force into distance is nothing but work done. So force and distance. So what is the force? PMI into A is the force. So distance traveled by the piston during the working stroke is nothing but L. Or any stroke it is L. So distance traversed by the piston is L. So force into distance, PMI into A into L. So that gives the work done per stroke, that is in Newton meter. Work done per working stroke. Now if you want work done per second, then work done per stroke into number of working strokes per minute. So that is why we calculated small n in the previous slide. So try to understand that. So in case of brake power, we want number of revolutions per minute, whereas in case of measurement of indicate power, we want number of working strokes per minute. So what happens? So this n, so we took it in number of explosions per minute or number of working strokes per minute. So you have to convert that into second. So you have to divide it by 60. So work done per stroke is nothing but PMI L into A. So into n by 60. So you'll get PMI LAN by 60, and this is the work done per second. This is called as indicated power. So indicated power in watt is nothing but PMI LAN by 60. So try to remember this formula. Indicated power is PMI LAN by 60. Now this is for a single cylinder. Now suppose if you want the indicated power to be calculated in kilowatt, so then divide it by 1000. So the purpose of dividing it by 1000 is only to convert watt into kilowatt. Try to understand that. Even in brake power calculation, so it is divided by 1000 only to convert watt into kilowatt. Suppose if you want to calculate the indicated power of a multi-cylinder engine, so then you have to multiply by K, because whatever it is the formula it is given for one cylinder. If there are K is the number of cylinders, so then you have to multiply by K, so that IP is equal to K into PMI LAN by 60 by 1000. Then there is one more method to measure the indicated power, so that is by the Mohs test. And please note, this test is applicable only to the multi-cylinder engines. If you have more than one cylinder, so then only you can go for the measurement of the indicated power. So what is the procedure? So initially the engine is run at the required speed and the torque is measured, but initially the engine has to be run till steady state. So then you have to conduct this experiment. So engine is run at a fixed speed, the required speed, and you have to measure the torque, that is by using the dynamometer, and you have to calculate the brake power of the engine. Now what you have to do is you have to cut off one of the cylinder. So one cylinder is cut off. Okay. So now if it is a spark plug SI engine, you have to short the spark plug to disconnect the, or to make one cylinder not working, or there should not be any combustion taking place in one of the cylinders. So that is called as cylinder is cut off. So you have to short circuit the spark plug if it is SI engine, and if it is a CI engine, so then you have to disconnect the fuel injector. So there should not be any fuel supplied to that particular cylinder. If there is no spark, so the combustion will not take place in that cylinder. Remember that. So that is the meaning of cylinder is being cut off. If there is no fuel injection, there is no combustion in case of CI engine in that cylinder. So that is the meaning of cut off. Okay. Now once the one of the cylinder there is no combustion, or if it is cut off, so automatically the power developed by the entire engine will fall down, because only 3 cylinders. Suppose if I take the example of a 4-cylinder engine, if you cut off one of the cylinders, so power will be developed by only 3 cylinders. So same load is there on the brake wheel, so automatically the speed will be reduced. Like if I give an example, so 4 people are carrying some weight, suddenly one of them is pulled out of the line, so automatically the weight carried by those 3 people will increase and their speed will reduce. Okay. The torque is measured. Okay, now the speed falls. Okay, so now what you have to do is you have to restore the speed by reducing the load. So load on the brake wheel has to be reduced so that the speed is restored to its original value. So like example, I gave the example of 4 people carrying some weight, and if one of them is pulled back, so their speed is reduced because they have to carry the same weight. Now if I reduce the weight, so they can once again move with the same speed. So this is just an example. So the torque is measured again after bringing the speed to original value. Okay, and you have to calculate the. So if you cut off one of the cylinders, the speed will reduce. So you have to reduce the load to bring the speed back to its original value, and you have to note down the brake power. So by noting the load, torque, and then the brake power is calculated. So if the values of the IP of the cylinders are denoted by I1, I2, I3 and I4, suppose if I take the example of the 4-cylinder engine, and the power losses in each cylinder are denoted by F1, F2, F3, F4, and the value of BP, that is B, at the test speed with all cylinders firing is given by, so try to understand this. See, when all the four cylinders are firing, so power is developed by all the four cylinders inside the engine cylinder. So that is known as indicated power. So I will denote it as I1, I2, I3 and I4. And there is frictional loss in all the four cylinders, which is denoted as F1, F2, F3 and F4. So then the total brake power, so I denote it as B suffix T, okay, BT. So that is given by brake power of the first cylinder, which is nothing but I1 minus F1, plus brake power of the second cylinder I2 minus F2, similarly I3 minus F3 and I4 minus F4. So this is the total brake power of the engine when all the four cylinders are firing. Now when the cylinder number 1 is cut off, then the contribution of I1 is lost, because when the one of the cylinder is not firing at all, or if it is not at all working, so where is the question of power developing in there? So I1 becomes 0. But you know that though the combustion is not taking place, the piston will be still reciprocating inside the cylinder, so the frictional losses will be there. Try to understand that. So only I1 becomes 0, but F1 doesn't become 0 just because the cylinder is cut off. So this has to be noted very carefully. Okay. Then the brake power developed when one of the cylinders is cut off is given by 0 minus F1, that is the friction loss of the first cylinder which is cut off. Then brake power of the second cylinder I2 minus F2, third cylinder I3 minus F3 and fourth cylinder I4 minus F4 will remain same, and the brake power will be less than the total brake power. If you subtract this equation 2 from 1, so then you will get BT minus B1 is equal to I1, that is the IP of the first cylinder. If you just look at these two expressions, okay, so if you subtract 2 from 1, so everything gets cancelled except I1. So BT minus B1, so that gives the indicated power of the first cylinder I1. Okay. Now similarly the procedure has to be continued. So initially you cut off cylinder number 1, now restore it and go for cylinder 2 to cut off. So cut off cylinder number 2. So I2 becomes 0, but all the friction losses will be there. So once again BT minus B2 will give the indicated power of the second. Once again you have to calculate the brake power when the cylinder number 2 is cut off. So BT minus B2, so that gives the I2. Now restore cylinder number 2 and cut off cylinder number 3, so you will get B3, and BT minus B3 will give I3. Similarly do it for now cylinder number 4, so BT minus B4 will give I4. So with this you are able to calculate, though it is a multi-cylinder engine, you are able to calculate the indicator power of the individual cylinders. So that is the beauty of this MOS test. You are able to calculate the indicator power of the cylinder number 1 I1, cylinder number 2 I2, cylinder number 3 I3 and cylinder number 4 I4. Then total indicator power of the engine IT is equal to I1 plus I2 plus I3 plus I4. Okay, so this is how the MOS test is used to calculate the indicator power of the multi-cylinder engine. Now let us discuss the measurement of friction power. So first one is by Whelan's line method. So this is applicable for single cylinder engine. Okay, you cannot do it for the multi-cylinder engine. So you have to run the engine at constant speed and load is increased in increments and the corresponding BP and the gross fuel consumption is taken. So you have to apply the load in steps, maybe 20%, 40%, 60%, 80% and then 100% or the full load. So 20% of full load, 40% of full load, like that, or in 25%, 50%, 75%. So in steps you have to increase the load and you have to note down the brake power and also the fuel consumption. Okay, then you have to plot a graph, that is fuel consumption against the brake power as shown in figure. So brake power has to be taken in the x-axis and fuel consumption has to be taken in the y-axis. So you will get a curve here. So this is the curve obtained after plotting fuel consumption against the brake power. So then you have to extrapolate this curve, or you draw a tangent to this curve. So this extrapolated line will intersect the negative brake power line at a point called as L. So this distance O to L is nothing but the friction power or the frictional loss which is taking place inside the engine cylinder. Okay, so I repeat the procedure. So start the engine, run the engine at a constant speed, then increase the load in steps, or you can decrease also. If you can start from the full load, you can decrease the load in steps, and note down the brake power and the fuel consumption for each of these loads, and plot a graph of fuel consumption versus BP, then extrapolate that back to cut the BP axis at the point L, or it is called as negative BP axis, and the distance OL is nothing but the friction power of the engine. So this method is called as the Whelan's line method. One more way to calculate the or measure the friction power is by Mohs test. So I'm not elaborating anything on Mohs test. So Mohs test, so you calculated the brake power, total brake power, and also you calculate the total indicated power. Suppose if the total brake power of the N cylinders is given as BPN, or B suffix T also you can use, because in the that explanation I told you about BT. Okay, and total indicated power I told you about IT. So the same terminology also you can use. So then friction power will be IP minus BP or IT minus BT, because if you use that same terminology, so friction power will be equal to IT minus that is indicated power total minus brake power total. But you don't write only this much for the explanation, so you have to write entire Mohs test explanation first, so then you have to show this, right? So BT, B1, B2, B3, B4, I1, I2, I3, I4, IT is equal to I1 plus I2 plus I3 plus I4. Then you would write the friction power is given by IT minus BT. Okay. One more method of measuring the friction power is the motoring test. So in this test, the engine is first run up to the desired speed by its own power and is allowed to remain under given speed and load conditions for some time, so that oil, water and engine component temperature reach stable conditions. So this is nothing but you are waiting till the engine reaches the steady state. So oil, water and engine component temperatures attain stable condition means the engine has attained the steady state. So initially you have to run the engine, okay, with a desired speed by applying a known load, and you have to wait for the steady state condition. So the power of the engine during this period is absorbed by the dynamometer. So since you have applied some load, so the power will be absorbed by the dynamometer. So now you have to cut off the fuel supply, okay, and by suitable electric switching devices you have to convert this dynamometer to be operated as a motor. So far the engine was coupled to the dynamometer, okay, so entire power was absorbed by this dynamometer. Now this is an electrical dynamometer, okay. So what happens is when you cut off the fuel supply, so automatically there is no power generation by the engine, but still you have to maintain the same speed. So what you have to do is you have to convert this dynamometer into an electric motor, right? And this motor will drive the engine at the same speed at which it was previously running. Now this power supply to this motor to maintain the speed is nothing but the friction power of the engine. This is very beautifully explained. So this is called as the motoring test. So you have to run the engine at a particular speed with a particular load at steady state. Then entire power produced by the engine is absorbed by the dynamometer. Then you have to cut off the fuel supply and you have to convert this dynamometer to operate as a motor, and the motor should drive this engine at the same speed at which it was previously running. Now the power supply, that is electric power supply to this motor, is measured, which is the measure of the friction power of the engine. Next is the measurement of fuel consumption. So the mass rate of fuel consumption is measured by noting the time taken for the consumption of the known volume of fuel. So you have to use a burette arrangement for this. So you have to cut off the fuel supply from the tank and you have to allow the fuel to flow from the burette to the engine. So note down the time taken for the known volume of the fuel. Okay, if V is the cc of the fuel, that's volume of the fuel consumed in t seconds. so time is in seconds and volume is in cc, then the mass rate of fuel consumption is given by mf is equal to volume in cc into specific gravity of fuel into 3600 by 1000 into T. Now this volume is in cc, so specific gravity if you take, so this cc gets cancelled because it will be gram per cc, so gram should be converted into kg, for that you have to divide it by 1000, so this will get gram becomes kg, and time is in seconds, so suppose if you want to convert that into per hour, you have to multiply it by 3600 because 1 hour is 3600 seconds. So how did you get this 3600 and 1000 is very, very important, but the condition is your volume should be in cc and time should be in seconds. I pardon, it is time should be in seconds. Okay. So as all of you know, so the heat is lost in an engine to the cooling water. So the heat carried away by cooling water is measured by measuring the water flow rate through the cooling jacket of the engine and also knowing the temperature rise of this water during its flow through the engine block. So engine, if it is a water cooled engine, so there is a water jacket surrounding the engine cylinder, or that is in the engine block, cylinder block rather. Okay, so water enters at the bottom and it comes out as hot water at the top, so continuously it absorbs heat from the engine and it takes it away through this water. So if you note down the mass flow rate of water as well as the temperature rise, so then you can calculate the heat carried away by the water. So the inlet and exit temperatures of the cooling water are measured. The flow rate of water is measured by collecting known mass of water over a specified period of time. So using a collecting jar, so collect water, note down the time, so then calculate the mass flow rate of water. Okay, so water flow rate also be measured by means of a rotometer or the flow meter. So if you measure note down all those readings, then the heat carried away by the cooling water is given by QW is equal to mass of water into specific heat of water into temperature rise, which is nothing but T2 minus T1. So here mass flow rate of water should be in kg per second, and CBW is specific heat of water, so that should be kilojoules per kg per Kelvin. So this value is a constant 4.187, and T1 and T2 are the inlet and outlet temperature of water. So in that case, this answer will be kilojoules per second if the mass flow rate is kg per second. Suppose if the mass flow rate is kg per minute, so then this quantity will be kilojoules per minute, and if the mass flow rate is kg per hour, so then the heat carried away by the cooling water will be kilojoules per hour. That means the unit of mass, that unit of time, the mass flow rate quantity MW, so that decides the unit, because heat unit is kilojoules. Per second or per minute or per hour is decided by the unit of MW, whether it is per second, per minute or per hour. Okay. Similarly, you can measure the heat carried by the exhaust gases. You know that exhaust gases also carry some heat, so you should calculate the mass flow rate of the exhaust gas, so which is nothing but mass of air plus mass of fuel, because this exhaust gas is nothing but the air and fuel undergoing combustion mixed in the combustion chamber and undergoing combustion. So mass of air plus mass of fuel is nothing but the mass of exhaust gas. So Ma is the mass of flow rate of air, Mf is the mass flow rate of fuel, so Me is the mass flow rate of exhaust gas. So heat carried away is given by QE is equal to mass of exhaust gas, that's a mass flow rate of exhaust gas, into specific heat of exhaust gas into the temperature difference. Here T is the exhaust gas temperature and TR is the ambient temperature or the room temperature. Okay, so Cp is the specific heat of the exhaust gases. Okay, so with this I conclude this lecture number 11, and this also concludes the theory portion of this chapter, that is part 2. So I'll continue to solve numericals in the next lecture. Thank you.